Hi, welcome to Tutorials Point. Let's get introduced to positive body language topic. To understand the word positive body language, of course, we're talking in connotation to everything which is positive about the body language and which is highly accepted in a group setting or maybe in an individual conversation. Time and again, the study of body language has proven its fact that it is very pivotal to keep in mind certain standards that we are supposed to follow, be it in every walk of your life, be it your office setting or be it in a social setting as such. Let's understand what this video tutorial has in store for us. Understanding the course overview, introduction, we're getting introduced to the topic, importance, the significance of body language as such with the positivity, non-verbal communication, that is how do I interpret certain signals and get the communication from the person, understand the communication and also get across my communication to the person who's listening to me. Good posture, that is standard posture, proper handshake, proper hand movements. Why it is important that each time I talk and each time I am in public, why do I have to focus on the fact that my hand movements have to be at the appropriate movement. Crossed legs etiquette, there's one of the style again that we follow. Pleasant facial expression, not everyone has that graceful expression on the face. Proper eye contact, the game of eyebrows, there are different eyebrow technique and observation that we can see each time we connect with people, and what these techniques have actually given the information through the interpretation manner. Moving on, the eyebrow flash, one of the most universal language technique to greet somebody or to acknowledge a person whom you are looking at. Sideways glance, the magic of blinking, the dart, the authority gaze. Detecting liars, voice control, why do I have to keep in mind the modulation part, the pitch, the volume, the stress in the conversation. Moving on, safe space, that is what distance do I have to place each time I am talking to somebody. It has to be one hand distance, mirroring, and then we conclude the topic as such. So, positive body language introduction. So, any role that we play in today's world where we are seen, where we are keenly observed among people, the effective usage of body language becomes relevant. So, each time I'm aware, each time I decipher or I get an opportunity to understand somebody else's behavior, I master the art of body language. So, just gather some information, connect with people who have been successful in their personal lives or maybe in their professional lives. So, when I say personal life, people who have won friends and people who have always had this opportunity to be connected in a socializing group, they have one thing common to say is they have been aware and sensitive of the fact that they have been connecting with people and being mindful the way we project ourselves in the society. So, moving on, positive body language has these things with that needs a little on discussion, which is it is involuntary in action. So, that is why there is one topic that we are going to keenly observe and discuss in this video tutorial is how to detect a liar. So, there are certain natural body language aspects that happens, and you can easily detect a liar where it is not a voluntary action. Hence, you cannot have a control on your body language for certain communication from a channel where you have to lead in with the conversation, where you have to talk and lead in. So, talking again, it is involuntary, that is you do not have a control. Moving on, your all body parts are gauged. When I say gauged, the way I stand, the way I look into the eye of somebody while I am talking, the way my postures are, the way my gestures are, and the way I connect. So, there are certain subtle messages I as a human being that I send out. Each time I am talking and I am interacting, I am in a conversation group, that is through my gestures, facial expression, through my smile. So, these are all gauged by a person who is interacting with you. And moving on, no grammar needed, because I don't necessarily have to hold a degree to understand this video tutorial or to understand the subject and master it. Moving on, broad interpretation, that is there are a lot of specific words which we've been using in this video tutorial as well, which will not only help you understand the effective usages, it also helps you to imbibe with it and incorporate the learning ahead. Moving forward, importance of positive body language. So let's look at this picture and analyze and self-reflect ourselves. Have you ever been in this situation, or have you analyzed somebody else's body language in this situation? So this is basically an impression that I'm casual, I am disinterested, I lack zeal about the entire experience that I'll be taking up, either an interview process or a discussion process. This can not just ruin your interviews but also ruin the relationship with the person as well, because it clearly depicts lack of interest and lack of zeal with the connection. Next slide, non-verbal communication. Like this slide is the crux of the entire positive body language. It not just talks and give relevance about non-verbal, that is otherwise body language as a communication style. It talks about tone of voice as well. So tone is nothing but the emotion that I convey, a message, a thought that I am emotionally connecting with somebody. Moving on, spoken words, which only accounts for 7% in the entire communication pie chart. So 55% is your non-verbal communication, your body language. Your tone takes over 38%, which is still a major chunk, and 7% is your words. So I remember, every time I connect with people and each time they ask me the relevance of words, or rather choice of words, I give them a similar suggestion that it isn't about words which plays an important role, but all about the entire fluency as an experience, and as well as your body language projection too. Moving on, a good posture. A posture is defined as the way I stand, the way I project my body in a standing position. So understanding many of the conversations in our life happens in standing position. That is, it could be a business setting, it could be a conference, it could be a social gathering as well. Moving further, standing erect. Well, this is one of the ideal position that we recommend. We recommend this to anybody who's in business world and who is looking out for or aspiring to be in the business world. Now this body language clearly depicts not just a erect body posture, it talks in lines with a smile and eye contact as well. So this isn't still stiff in terms of the body language positioning, but it is more on ideal scale, so this is recommended. So next slide, face the person. So each time I am in face-to-face conversation with a person, I not just hold the smile with the eye contact, I balance smile with the eye contact as well. So this picture again is on clear depiction of the same. Moving further, free your hands. Now hand movement plays a very important role. That is, each time I am in a public speaking environment, each time I'm asked to speak in a group of people, or maybe a face-to-face conversation, or maybe a virtual conversation, my hand movements depicts and convey a message that I am open as a person, I am free for discussion, I am open for any sort of constructive feedback. Next slide is in lines with my mind, with my limbs, that is my hand movements and my leg positioning. So this picture is a classic example of the way I can be seated if I am in a business or contextual setting, and not just holding my smile with an efficient body language, but I balance my positioning with my eye contact and smile too. Again, an ideal picture to emulate and copy. Moving further, mind your legs. Now very little space or leverage is given for positioning your legs, because we all give importance to eye contact, your smile, or maybe gestures and facial expression, and little we think that about the positioning of the legs. Next picture is in line with the very fact that I don't slouch, and to showcase myself that I am lazy, I am casual as a person. Next in line is scream of importance, the way I am positioning myself, the way I am seated in a business context, in a social gathering. Now this is a total contextual picture, and the reason we selected this business formal picture is for very reason to talk in lines with how do I project myself in a business setting, in a business environment. Moving further, the proper handshake. Well, handshake is a greeting that has been acknowledged by many cultures, communities, and globally across. So what is important is handshake is knowing these facts, that is, handshake is a sign of welcoming people. It not only just helps us to offer and welcome people on board with the conversation. A handshake should not convey dominance or submission. So, in a consecutive slides, we will see more about what are the do's and don'ts, and what are the different types of handshake that we see exist across, and analyze yourself whether you fall in one of these categories or not. Moving further, the equality handshake. Now, this is one of the suggestion and high on recommended list. I follow a similar handshake. Just analyze the picture for about a second or two and see that there's nothing that can be conveyed or spoken otherwise. Moving further, submissive handshake. Now, this is a handshake which is clearly depicting the very fact that I am low on my confidence, I'm low on my self-esteem as well, and I regard myself low. Let's see what is next in store for us, the dominant handshake. Now, this is clearly a depiction of somebody who's dominant as a person, who's not open for conversation, who's unprofessional, and who's not approachable. Next slide, the double handler handshake. Now, this is quite contextual as well. Now, this is totally for someone who's undergoing certain emotional drain, certain emotional experience where they need the the touch, the very feeling of touch, and sort of analyzing it that yes, somebody is there for you and somebody is actually genuinely caring for you. Moving further, the wet fish hand shake. This is something more like a body type and a personality type. If you analyze yourself that you have wetty palms, that is no sweaty palms, then you have to really rethink of giving your hand to somebody for a handshake, for simple reason you don't want to upset the person on hygiene lines and on professional lines. Now, this is not so being accepted and acknowledged by a lot of people who have sweaty palms. You just have to be a little conscious of the mind that when this is your body type, either wipe it off with a tissue paper, or you just have to be little vocalizing in your thoughts, stating that I have a sweaty palm and I really wish to rethink on giving handshake. Moving further, the wise handshake. Well, the picture clearly depicts, I don't have to really talk in depth about why it is not really on suggestive list. And moving further, the bone breaker handshake, in similar lines to wise handshake. Now, this handshake again has something where I crunch somebody's bones and not in lines with professionalism. The fingertip handshake. Now, this is quite culturally accepted by certain communities and certain nationalities. I do not want to give out a clear depiction as to which country follows it, because every country has its own specific rules and they do keep changing as the social evolution revolves. Moving further, straight finger handshake. Now, this is something where you're not okay, where you're not encouraging somebody, where you do not make an attempt to give a handshake to somebody, not on lines of professionalism too. Moving further, proper hand movements. Hand movements are quite voluntary in nature. Like we already discussed that body language in general is involuntary. Likewise, hand movements are quite involuntary as well. Moving further, open your palms, which is an open body gesture. We have already discussed in detail about it, that each time I open my palms, I have an open and free hand movement. It clearly talks about how open I am as a person, how okay I am as a person to acknowledge things across the world. Uncrossed the arms. So each time I uncross the arms, now this has two meaning and definition attached to it. Now, this picture in this setting clearly talks about defensiveness, where I'm not open as a person for body language, but culturally and contextually as a student, when I do it here in India or with in front of the elders, I am accepted and I'm acknowledged. So look at the setting and convey your message, what you want to convey. Next slide, don't grip your arms. Now, this is quite a deal to understand the very fact that not everybody is okay for a hand movement across somebody else's body. Now, this totally depends on the kind of relationship you hold with the opposite person, and how comfortable is the opposite person with your hand on somebody else's arm. So, this is quite a personal sort of body language, and somewhere you need to have the control over the conversation, control over the experience with the opposite person, and how good relationship building have you done with the person. So don't grip your arms. It is very cautious decision that we all make not to sort of follow this in every contextual settings that we go through. For simple reason, this is more from in lines with where you hold certain amount of rapport with the person, and you need to be quite sensitive of the fact that everybody is comfortable to allow themselves to be touched by the others. So being mindful and being extra sensitive can help us go a long way in life. This is more of somewhere where we have a certain connection. The connection could be natural connection that you've been doing it, a similar body gesture with the other person, or it could be as simple as that, I hold certain rapport with the other person and I have control over the entire experience and conversations. So moving on, zero arm barrier. This is quite important that each time I walk into a restaurant or each time I'm connecting with somebody, I maintain something called zero arm barrier distance. That is, I don't hold things very close to my chest, or I don't hold things which are very close to myself in order to showcase that I do not give space to the other person. So moving on, parallel over perpendicular, this is quite an important distinctive analysis to understand why it is important that I give a lot of leverage to the word parallel rather than giving it to the word perpendicular. So each time I give out a perpendicular body posture to somebody whom I am in conversation with or whom I am connecting with, I am giving out a very rude and a subtle message that I am curt. So the advice is I go through the other arm that can point to them and can be parallel to your chest. So especially in group discussion, there's a mandate that we all follow. So each time I give out a contact, eye contact or probably a hand contact to somebody, referring them to a conversation, it plays a very important role that I do not give out my arm perpendicular to the opposite person whom I'm referring to in a conversation, but rather I give out my parallel arm to the person. I come out as friendly and respectful in the entire conversation. So moving on, always try to have the arm parallel to the body rather than being perpendicular, and also to keep in mind is the arm that has to be perpendicular is not okay in a mandate such as group setting or group discussion. So cross legs etiquette. Well, etiquette again from a mannerism standpoint, it is always said and claimed the very reason that we all give importance to our hand movements, to our eye contact, to our smile, but we just give very less importance to something called my leg movement, especially when I'm standing, especially when I'm seated. So this is one of the moments that we're going to talk about. So your effective usage of leg etiquette talks in lines with this definition, which talks in about defensiveness, submission, and adopted by people who are complete strangers to each other. So this is one of the body language type that we all naturally follow as women too, that I place one leg on the other leg, and I'm in conversation with the opposite person, or whether I'm just being seated in a group. So this talks on submission and being direct with the person. So moving on to understand standing leg cross, this is also one of the depiction to talk in lines with I am not open as a person for the conversation. I am open for the conversation, but however I am not open for the connection. So especially when women has this kind of body language, I clearly emphasize that to a larger extent I am open for conversation, but I am not open for connection. So moving on and understanding the double cross leg position. So over here what I technically do is I place my feet on the other leg, and I also cross my hands. So this is again a depiction of rude body language that doesn't come out on professional lines, that doesn't come out on friendly lines as well. So moving further, figure 4 leg clamp. This is in lines with somebody who wants to portray that they know everything, they're dominant about the fact. And again, so when I look at this position, I have a stiff body language to talk in lines, and I sort of like I do not look as a person who comes out as a friendly person. So this is more on dominant lines. So ankle lock, this is as well as not so accepted in terms of body language movement, because what I do is I allow the other feet to lengthen up with the in comparison to the feet that is being placed, and this is more of a casual line body language. From a business world view, this is again a casual body language. So the leg twine, this is 2 is in lines with casual, the one we have already discussed. So to keep in mind is in a business context this is not allowed. So moving further, now this is parallel lines, like we've discussed something on parallel arm as well, where I do not come out as a rude person and I come out as somebody who's respecting somebody's space and viewpoint. So this body language showcases that I'm confident, I have certain self-esteem, and I come out as friendly and approachable as a person. Dominant stand, well, this is one of the pictures that clearly depicts the dominant stand, where I do not have a drooping shoulder, I am stiff when it comes to the body language type, and I might be okay in a conversation, but I do not give a message that I'm open for a conversation. So attention position, well, this is more in lines with where somebody who is on a higher hierarchy and a little lower hierarchy individual would like to connect with the higher hierarchy person. So pleasant expression, now this moves on to a different gamut of discussion all together. So looking at this picture, it clearly depicts not just my eye contact, the pleasant expression and the gestures that I place, and I come out as a non-dominant, I come out as a personality who would love to be connected and love to be bounded with. Proper eye contact, now this is something we will discuss in detail because this is equally important when we talk with postures and gestures comparison. So proper eye contact means I hold the eye contact for about 3 seconds with the person, I do not stare, but I equally blink my eyes when it is needed, and I give out a message that I'm interested in the conversation. By the way, this particular gesture or the facial expression is in lines or directly related to something called how interested I am in a conversation, how okay I am in a conversation to be acknowledged, to be accepted, and how okay I am to receive a feedback. So moving on, the game of eyebrows. Now this is something in a discussion where the natural expression comes into the picture. Now this totally is contextual. We will not suggest you to go ahead and imbibe this kind of expression and eyebrow pattern. For simple reason, it is not adjusted by every person in a community or society. So the eyebrow flash, this is quite a common gesture which is accepted in all communities, cultures across the globe. Now this particular eyebrow flash says that I acknowledge the person's presence, or when I see somebody in distance and I just greet the person without even giving out a verbiage that a hello or a greeting. So this comes in quite naturally to me, and we all have encountered this as an expression where I just raise a right eyebrow of mine or a left eyebrow of mine, that hello or a greeting, or maybe I like to convey that I acknowledge your presence here. So this is quite naturally done by Hillary Clinton in this picture, and this picture totally depicts the subject of what we are talking, that is eyebrow flash, and accepted but in lines with culture, nationality and communities. So the sideways glance, now this is more like a third eye is what we talk in rough translation, where I look some information from a third eye point of view. In professional settings, it is a total no-no for simple reason, isn't accepted by everyone. Moving on, the magic of blinking, like I said, every third second I blink when I'm in conversation. This is a rule book that I'm supposed to follow. If I do not do it, I come out as a person who stares, I come out as a person who's rude, and I come out as a person who's not in a professional setting, in an atmosphere. The dart, where I keep looking at something, an important point in a person's body language. So we generally have this tendency of looking either directly into the eye or directly or at the forehead of a person, not accepted again in a business context setting. Moving on, the authority gaze. Now this comes in very naturally for a lot of leaders who are born with the leadership skills. So this is something maybe we all have to imbibe if we are moving into a role called a leader or a manager, where I am, my primary responsibilities is to supervise or to lead the discussion or to lead the team. So this is something we have to work to get this sort of gaze. Now let's look at this picture. So this picture not only talks about just the eye contact element of it, but along with a smile too. So moving on, detecting liars. Now this is quite interesting talk, and if I have to convey a message to get this into a deeper level of understanding and knowledge. So there's a study called neuro-linguistic programming, and I'm certified on that. So this actually leads towards understanding how to detect a liar. So moving on, now this is one of the body language type, that is I touch on my body part, I touch and I place my feet on the other feet, and I place my legs on the other side of the legs. Now this is a typical body language type where people are lying. And look at this picture on the right hand side, where I see somebody placing or probably trying to bite their nails. Now biting nails do come out as an hygiene concern as well, where when you are in a group conversation. And this is also one of the reasons where people are detected that they are liars when they start biting the nails. Well, the other side to look at biting nails is confusion, where somebody is in chaotic thoughts, where somebody is not confident to take it ahead in what they are doing. Voice control. Now this is quite interesting to know the very reason that why we are here in this slide. Moving on from body language, expression, gestures, and mastering the very reason of knowing and being aware of your own signals, leading us to understand somebody better and communicate with them effectively. Now this piece equally has its own importance. Voice control. Now we all have a control on body language, at least in this tutorial when you end up learning and understanding more. So voice control again is where I have to make a conscious effort of moving on and working towards it. So it is always suggested that I follow 3 P's when I am in under the control of voice, or probably when I am keeping a tap on my voice. So which is pause, pitch, and being positive. So moving on and understanding why it is important to have a short pause and a long pause. Now this is quite contextual. So when I say pitch, we are going to talk about the bass or the quality of my voice. When I talk about pause, that is my pause management as to at every word where do I pause and what part of the words. Now this is something you have to pull up on in lines with the sentence rule. Rules in English grammar, where which part of the word I pause, and I pause at the appropriate time to make it effective in my to make it effectively understood and effectively being spoken as a speaker. So moving further, safe space. Now this is quite an important topic, because I am not comfortable as an individual and as a woman when somebody intrudes my personal space. Like in the earlier video we already have discussed why it is important to have a one-hand distance while we are communicating and while we are talking with an individual. So I don't technically take a measuring tape and start having a measurement, but I just have this mental figure of keeping my hand to this distance and knowing and understanding that I cannot intrude somebody's space for reasons being on professional lines, for reason means I might be labeled as a person who is not accepted in the society. So just be mindful of this thought, that when you're communicating with any gender for that matter, I keep these things in mind. So mirroring. Now this is one of the body language from a psychology point of view. When I have to create rapport, when I am in the process of making that all attempt of building that rapport with in the conversation with the person that whom I intend to. And let's understand very reason that we all human beings are connected for simple reason. We all address ourselves as friends, and we all have to evolve in this relationship called friendship. So for this I have to keep my tap in lines, that is I have to make all my equal attempts to make that relationship evolving. So how do I do it? I do it for a simple reason called something called mirroring, and this happens on a conscious level where I start looking at somebody, maybe I just imbibe the body language as something of this kind when I know somebody is talking to me, or probably I just go ahead with the similar body language of what the opposite person is talking to me. So this comes on to a subconscious level where we actually do not realize that we are modeling somebody else's behavior, that is somebody else's body language. Now this can have a total regard on how you're holding the relationship with the person and how the person is viewing you in the relationship, be it in a professional context or be it in a friendly context. So conclusion, well, it is equally important that I keep a tab on my body language and I understand I have the awareness. What is most important and that we would like to feed you today is keeping one thing in mind. Though we read certain signals and signs that has been been given as an education through this video tutorial to y'all, what lies and what is most important is different cultures, nationalities, communities, and on a global scale it differs. For example, a greeting or a handshake in Japanese culture is totally a taboo, but a greeting or a handshake, that is a handshake, is totally accepted and quite a welcome gesture in the other part of the world. So what lies in store for us to understand the very reason that when I'm connecting with a person, when I'm not really sure why this person is on a repeat mode of this kind of body behavior, you better stop yourself, excuse yourself in the conversation and ask, is it something, a reason that people have a common body language type here in this country or community? So you would be certainly be educated on, and you can take this education forward and be mindful of a very reason that I do not apply all the concept that I learned in body language with different people and with different culture and different practices. So though the importance of positive language is relevant, however, the important thing to keep in mind, and it is very imperative, that I totally go by the nationality and culture of a person. So thank you for watching. Do share your comments and feedback in the comment box below, and we would like to certainly initiate a discussion with you. Thank you.